Hi, and welcome to our Molecular Biology and Diagnostics. For today's lecture, we will focus on your modules 13 to 14, and it is about your genetic disorders. So for our DNA replication, may mga tendency talaga na pwede pong magkaroon or maka-encounter ng errors towards the latter part of the DNA replication kung saan nagkakaroon ng mutation. Okay, so for the telomeres, nagkakaroon ng shortening, and then merong mga errors, and then yung mga errors na yon, it can lead to mutations or yung mga somatic cells natin nagkakaroon ng cancer. So for our human chromosomes, may mga tendency din na makaka-encounter yung chromosomes natin or makaka-experience ito ng mga errors, and that could lead to genetic disorders. So your human chromosomes, it is being comprised of a protein and then your DNA. Again, your DNA, it is your deoxyribonucleic acid. And then DNA is an individual chromosome. It is a long molecule and it is highly coiled and condensed. Ano po ulit yung tawag natin doon sa protein na responsible for the coiling and the condensation of your DNA? Yes po, tama. Histones yung tawag doon. Your histones are positively charged and then your DNA are negatively charged. So pag nag-combine sila, magkakaroon ng electrostatic reaction. And then magiging coiled na yung mga DNA natin. The purpose of the coiling is to be packed and then mag-fit siya doon sa chromosome natin. Okay, so gamitan lang natin ng pen. Okay, your DNA, it is a one linear molecule of DNA that is winded up around your histone proteins. Pagka nagkaroon na ng electrostatic reaction, magkakaroon na ng nucleosomes, yung parang ating mga tinatawag na macaroons, natatandaan. So, pagka nagkaroon ka na ng macaroons, yung chromatin, di ba, parang fiber siya, may mga macaroons dyan. Macaroons, 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 ayan, ganyan. Sorry for the drawing. Ayan, sa chromatin, nandun yung mga nucleosomes natin. Okay? And then yan, yung chromatin na yan, it will lead to your chromosomes. So your chromatin, it is a complex combination of a DNA, RNA, and then your protein. And mainly, it has two classes. We have your heterochromatin, it is condensed, and the euchromatin, it is extended. And what are the functions of your chromatin? Itong mahaba na to. It packages the DNA into smaller volume to fit into the cell. It supports the DNA to allow mitosis and the meiosis. Okay, ano po ang difference again ni mitosis and meiosis? Mitosis, ito yung mga division ng ating mga cells. Pag meiosis, pag mga sex cells ang involved, yun ang kanilang difference. And what are the factors that affect your chromatin structure? Apat po sila. We have the chemical modifications of histone proteins, the methylation, the acetylation, and non-histone DNA binding proteins. So your eukaryotic cells, as humans, we have diploid human cells. We have 46 chromosomes. So ito, tingnan natin on our right side, ito. Okay, mga chromosome yan, mga yan. And maraming DNA sa loob na yan. So as an individual, meron kang 46 na chromosomes. Ito siya, oh. Okay, parang 1, 2, 3, hanggang 23. Last mo yung responsible for the sex chromosome. Sorry, ang pangit ng sulat ko. Ayan, 23. Ito siya. So yung 23 dito, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, hanggang 23 is came from your father. And then yung 23 dun sa ka-pair. Okay, itong pair niya to, yung mga, ayan, coming from the mother naman. So we have 23 inherited from each parent. Sorry talaga, ang pangit ng aking mouse ngayon. Ayan, yung mga isa-isa dyan coming from the father, and then yung isang kapares galing naman sa nanay. So that makes up your 23 homologous pairs of chromosomes. Homologous meaning identical. Kung ano yung itsura ng isa, dapat yun din yung itsura ng isa. Kung ano yung laman ng isa, yun din yung laman ng isa. Kasi nga, they are identical to one another. Next, these are the abnormalities of chromosome number. We have your aneuploidy, the abnormal cells that do not contain a multiple of chromosomes. It is the most common and clinically significant type of human chromosome abnormality. It accounts for 3 to 4% of all clinically recognized pregnancies. And then the most common cause is non-disjunction. Didiscuss po natin later si non-disjunction. It is the failure of chromosomes to disjoin. And then normally, it is during meiosis. So the polyploidy, okay, meaning madami, cells are exploit with more than the normal diploid numbers. Usually 46 siya, di ba? Pag diploid 2N chromosomes, nagkakaroon ng 3N and 4N. The common abnormality seen in the first trimester losses. And we have the trisomy. Trisomy naman po, i-discuss natin yan sa mga susunod na slides. But the chromosomal test used to detect the trisomy is what we call the FISH. It is used for rapid diagnosis in the prenatal detection of common fetal aneuploidies such as your chromosome 13, 18, and 21 as well as the sex chromosomes. And then these are the most common numerical abnormalities in live-born children. Kabisado si trisomy 21. It is the Down syndrome. Trisomy 18, Edwards syndrome. Trisomy 13, the Patau syndrome. And then the other sex chromosomal aneuploidies. So, nandito pa lang tayo sa molecular biology, i-discuss na siya. Pagdating nyo po ng clinical chemistry on your third year, i-discuss ulit siya. Okay, your chromosomal disorders, yung pinaka-chromosome natin, okay, nagkakaroon din po yan ng mga failures or ng mga errors. Kaya, nagkakaroon tayo ng chromosomal disorders, katulad ng mga DNA natin na nagkakaroon ng errors, kaya nagkakaroon ng mutations. Okay? The chromosomal disorders are caused by loss, gain, or abnormal arrangement of one or more of the 46 chromosomes composing the human diploid genome. The abnormal chromosome numbers, yung nabanggit natin, the euploidy, the cell has a multiple of 23 chromosomes. These are the gametes naman, okay, yung sperm and egg cells are euploid that have 23 chromosomes, haploid yung tawag doon, and most somatic cells, the 46 chromosomes or the diploid. Then there are two types of euploid cells with abnormal number of chromosomes. We have your triploidy and the tetraploidy. Yung binanggit natin na non-disjunction kanina, ano pong sabi natin sa non-disjunction? The most common cause ng aneuploidy natin is the non-disjunction. Ano po yung non-disjunction, ma'am? Non-disjunction, usual cause of aneuploidies including yung Down, Edward, Patau, Turner, and Klinefelter syndromes. It is most likely to occur during oogenesis, that is during the spermatogenesis. Kasi nabanggit natin kanina, usually sa meiosis nangyayari ang non-disjunction. Kaya po, it is most likely to occur during the oogenesis, during your spermatogenesis. Most likely, increasing po siya sa mga maternal ages. And then may mga environmental agents such as radiation, alcohol. They appear to have no measurable influence. And then more likely, it can occur in the meiosis 1 rather than your meiosis 2. And then if a chromosome of chromatids fail to separate, non-disjunction, ibig sabihin ayaw nilang maghiwalay. Okay? Either in mitosis or meiosis, yung one daughter cell nun, walang copy. Yung isa, dodoble siya. Pwede po siyang mangyari sa mga autosomes natin na normal or sa sex chromosomes. Ito yung mga autosomes natin. Yan mga yan, autosomes yan. Ito yung sex chromosomes. Ano po yung sinasabi mo, ma'am, na puro statement? Ano po yan? Hindi po namin ma-figure out, hindi namin ma-imagine. For example, ito siya. Okay, dun sa isang cell mo, it will undergo yung cell division na for the meiosis. So instead na maghiwalay sila, di ba dapat magkakaroon niya ng separation para makapag-replicate siya? Hindi po nangyari yun. So for the meiosis 1, nagsama pa rin siya. Dapat maghihiwalay na yan dito para makagawa na siya ng identical copy. So pag nagkaroon ka ng isa dyan, magkakaroon ulit ng identical copy. So nung gumawa ng mga susunod na identical copy, yung ginawa niya dito walang laman. So yung mga kasunod doon, walang laman na. Okay? Ito naman, sa kabilang situation naman, scenario, sa normal distribution, nagbigay siya ng isang copy dito, ng isang copy lang dito. Tapos nung nag-replicate siya dito sa baba, nakapag-produce siya ng dalawa dito, normal, pero dito wala. Dito naman, tag-isa lang. So, hindi pa rin po sila well-functioning. Okay? Yun yung tinatawag nating non-disjunction. Hindi naghiwalay. Okay? The non-disjunction during your meiosis can can happen to your ovum or your sperm. Next, your aneuploidy. It is the deviation from the euploid number. It represents a gain or a loss of a specific chromosome. And we have two major forms of your aneuploidy. So next, punta naman po tayo sa tinatawag nating trisomy. Trisomy, tatlo. Tri. Okay, we have an extra chromosome. It has 3 instead of 2 copies of the homologous chromosome. For example, ito po siya. Ayan, si trisomy 21, wag na wag niyong kalilimutan na yun si Down's syndrome. So, nung mga bata-bata pa tayo, lagi natin yan pinagbibiruan, yung mga mongoloid, di ba? Hindi pa tayo well-educated with regards to the genetics. Ginagawa pa nating kalokohan at biro yung Down syndrome. Okay, so ngayon, na well-educated na tayo, and then as medical laboratory scientists in the field of medicine, hindi na po natin siya dapat gawing biro. Okay, so going back, the trisomy 21 or the Down syndrome is when you have an extra copy of the chromosome. Instead na homologous, identical lang sila sa 21. Sa ika-21 mo, nagkaroon ng extra copy. Nagkaroon ng isa pa dyan, may kabit, naging 3 sila. Okay, you have an extra copy of the chromosome 21. It is the most common trisomy. Meron pa tayong other types of trisomy, but the most common is yung 21, which is the Down syndrome. The frequency is that it accounts for 1 in 650 live births, regardless of the geography or ethnic background. So the resulting, or what are the results of having 3 copies of chromosome 21 instead na 2 lang sila? Ito po yun. So they have an increased risk on your ALL or your acute lymphocytic leukemia, duodenal atresia, celiac disease, mental retardation. Usually, yung may mga Down syndrome, yung mga tinatawag natin nung bata pa tayo na mongoloid, ayun po sila po yun. So ngayon, hindi na po natin dapat gawin yun, ha? Next, the short stature, the hypotonia, excuse me, depressed nasal bridge, upslanting palpebral fissures, and then epicanthal fold. Meron din po silang mga Alzheimer's disease by 5th or 6th decade. And then amyloid precursor protein, your APP gene on the chromosome 21. Meron din silang reduced fertility. And then the risk increases with increased maternal age. So dapat ang ideal talaga dapat na magbuntis ang isang babae is around 20-something bago mag-30. Kasi kapag mas matanda na yung babae, yung female, mas matanda na siya nagbuntis, meron na talagang mga risk na magkaroon ng mga genetic disorders yung kanyang offspring or yung kanyang baby. Risk lang naman po, hindi naman sinabi na 100% sure na pag nag-anak ka ng 45 or 46, meron na siyang Down syndrome or your trisomy 21. Increased risk lang naman po. So next, another type of your trisomy is the trisomy 13. We're done with the 21. Proceed na kay 13. It is a chromosomal condition that is associated with severe mental retardation and certain physical abnormalities. Excuse me. The patient may manifest small eyes that may exhibit a split in the iris, an opening in the roof of the mouth, yung tinatawag natin na cleft palate, tingnan po natin sa ating right side, and or a cleft lip, or the weak muscle tones, skeletal abnormalities. Affected individuals rarely live past infancy because of the life-threatening medical problems associated with this condition. So, yung mga patients natin that are experiencing trisomy 13, hindi na talaga sila usually nagde-develop and then tumatanda. Usually, mga baby pa lang, namamatay na sila. So, the trisomy 13 affects approximately 1 in 10,000 newborns. The risk of having a child with trisomy 13 increases as a woman gets older. So, dalawang statement na yung nagsasabi sa atin na ang babae dapat mag-bear siya ng child at around 20 plus or to 30 plus. Kasi kapag ka masyado na talagang matanda or masyadong past na dun sa kanyang childbearing age, may tendency po talaga at mas mataas na yung risk na makapag-produce siya ng offspring na merong genetic disorder. Next, we have your Turner Syndrome. One sex chromosome lang po siya. And then yung patient has underdeveloped sex characteristics. Pansinin nyo dito. 'Di ba? Yung inyong sex chromosomes dapat identical yan, homologous, may ka-pair. Instead, dun sa Turner Syndrome, mag-isa lang yung sex chromosome. Next, sex chromosome aneuploidy pa din. It is relatively common and tends to have less severe consequences than your autosomal aneuploidy. At least one X chromosome is required for survival. Y chromosome is present for the male phenotype with minor exceptions. And then more than one X chromosome present, all but one will become a bar body in each cell. So next is your sex chromosome aneuploidy, about 1 in 400 males and 1 in 650 females. Most common chromosome abnormality seen in live-born infants, children, and adults. And then those affected may have few or no physical or developmental problems. So balikan lang natin si Turner's Syndrome. Turner Syndrome, sabi po dito, it is characterized by complete or partial monosomy of X chromosome defined by a combination of phenotypic features. And then the half of your Turner syndrome have 45 X chromosome complement. Other half exhibit mosaicism and varied structural abnormalities of X or Y chromosome. Usually it occurs in approximately 1 in 5,000 female live births. And then 95 to 99% of 45X conceptions are miscarried. And then 75% of patients lost sex chromosome is of paternal origin, whether an X or Y. So ang kasunod naman po natin doon is your Klinefelter syndrome. Klinefelter syndrome, yan, meron po siyang 47 na XXY. So, yung ating mga patient na merong Klinefelter syndrome, they usually manifest underdeveloped sex organs. Usually, meron silang testicular atrophy, mas maliit than dun sa normal size of the testes. Usually, infertile din sila kasi nga merong underdeveloped sex organ. So, it can lead to infertility. Gynecomastia, merong increased size ng breast even for the male patients. And then the female distribution of hair, mas madami than the usual. And then merong low testosterone ng mga male patients. And then merong mga elevated FSH and LH. Ito sa laboratory diagnosis na to. Okay, yung follicular stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. And then usually yung mga patient natin that have Klinefelter syndrome, they have high pitch voice kasi nga hindi nag-develop yung kanilang other organs na imbis na malaki, 'di ba? During the puberty, lumaki yung boses, naging maliit and then high pitch na siya. Next, genetic disorders pa din po tayo. It can also caused by recessive defective alleles. Each parent carries one recessive allele. Offspring may inherit the defective allele from both parents and get the disease. Yun yung tinatawag natin mga sickle cell, phenylketonuria, Tay-Sachs, cystic fibrosis, and Huntington's disease. So, i-discuss natin siya isa-isa. So, sa ating sickle cell or yung usually nagkukos siya ng sickle cell anemia, as we all know, meron po tayong codes for our amino acids. Since nagkaroon ng defect on the genes, yung inyong glutamic acid ay napalitan ng valine. So, sa ating DNA replication, once na nagkaroon ng ibang code na dyan, maiiba na din yung na-produce mo na amino acid, iba na rin yung mapoproduce mo na protein. Kasi nga, doon pa lang, 'di ba? Nagkaroon na ng main difference. So, imbis na glutamic acid, naging valine siya. So, ang tendency, ang ating mga hemoglobins, as it is a protein, okay, tignan po natin yung RBC ninyo, imbis na ang kanyang normal shape is biconcave, Biconcave siya in shape kasi it carries the oxygen and other nutrients papunta sa iba't ibang organs ng katawan natin. Meron ka nga pong defect doon sa certain type of amino acid, ayun, naging sickle siya, parang crescent, lumiit. So, hindi na niya nakikerry yung oxygen papunta doon sa iba't ibang organs. Ang tendency, magbablock pa siya sa iyong vessel, sa blood vessel mo. So, pag nag-block, maraming mga detrimental effects yan sa katawan. So, hindi siya makakarating sa brain, hindi makakarating, pag hindi nagkaroon ng tamang supply ng oxygen yung brain, magkakaroon ng multiple organ failure na yan. Sunod-sunod na yan. Okay? So, ganun po. Ganun si sickle cell anemia. Nagkaroon lang ng defect sa genes ng inyong amino acid, nag-code lang siya imbes na glutamic, naging valine lang, naapektuhan na lahat. Naging iba na yung shape ng inyong RBC, imbes na biconcave na nagkikerry ng mga oxygen and other nutrients, naging crescent, nag-block pati. Hindi na nakadaan, hindi na nakapag-supply to other organs. Next, we have your phenylketonuria or your PKU. Most children are screened at birth for PKU. It can lead to mental retardation. And then, the smaller the normal head, yung mga size ng mga head ng mga patients natin manifesting the phenylketonuria mas maliit. And then, they may experience epilepsy. So, ano po yung enzyme that is deficient on your patients having phenylketonuria? Yun yung tinatawag nating phenylalanine hydroxylase or your PAH. Again, the deficiency enzyme in your patients having phenylketonuria is the phenylalanine hydroxylase. This enzyme is necessary to metabolize the amino acid phenylalanine to the amino acid tyrosine. Next, we have your cystic fibrosis and then the Huntington's disease. So, unahin na natin si Huntington's disease. Huntington's disease is a dominant disease. You need to inherit only one copy of the disease to have it. Abnormal protein is produced and you start to kill the brain tissue occurs at the middle age. Mood swings, paralysis, loss of memory, uncontrolled movements, and eventually death. Okay? 1 in 20,000 in Western Hemisphere may experience the Huntington's disease and 1 in 1 million in Asia. So, umalas mo naman kung ikaw yung isa dun sa 1,000,000 tao, ba ang liit ng probability, tapos ang malas mo kung ikaw pa yung nakakuha ng ganong disease. Next, we have your cystic fibrosis. Kung napanood nyo na yung 5 feet apart, na palabas, pareho silang patient na may cystic fibrosis. So, anong nangyayari sa cystic fibrosis? It is a recessive disorder, a genetic mutation. It stops the production on a protein of cells in the lung, pancreas, or other organ. It affects about 1 on 2,500 births in the US. The widespread defect in the exocrine glands, abnormally viscid mucus secretions. It blocks the airways, pancreatic ducts, and biliary ducts. So usually yung ating mga mucus secretions, dapat ano lang yan, thin and slippery. But pag nagkaroon ng genetic defect for the cystic fibrosis, imbis na thin and slippery siya, nagiging mucoid. Okay, yung inyong mucus. So ang tendency na bablock yung airway, hindi nagkakaroon ng mga shortness of breath, hindi makahinga. Okay? Yung mga mucus, nagiging mucoid siya. Nagkakaroon ng blockage ang inyong airway. So, ganito po yun. Sa 5 feet apart. 5 feet apart. Kaya, lagi silang nakasuot ng dextrose. Lagi silang may takaturok or tsaka may parang inhaler sila. Ganun. So, next, how do we detect or how will we know if yung family natin is merong family history of that certain type of genetic disorder or kung meron tayong increased risk for that specific type of genetic disorder. So, ang mga pwede nating gawin is we could ask our parents, yung mga iba nating family members, pwede tayo mag-lurk or di ba pagka merong mga events, may mga birthday, pwede natin tanongin si tita, tito, and then sila lolo, lola kung what happened to tito, what happened dong sa namatay siya, ano yung kanyang cause of death. Pwede din natin i-check yung mga birth certificate or death certificate rather. And then, in that way, nagkakaroon tayo ng idea kung ano ba yung mga genetic disorders that runs into our family. So yung mga X-linked, 'di ba? Mga sex-linked diseases, nabanggit na po natin 'yan. So, ma'am, paano naman po kung gusto po malaman nung parents kung yung kanilang bagong panganak na baby ay merong genetic disorder? Parang without asking yung family members, what if hindi po sila okay ng family members or walang idea yung ibang relatives kung meron bang genetic disorder yung kanilang family. So, one thing to screen yung mga genetic disorders natin, yung tinatawag natin na newborn screening, yung mga newborn. Okay, they are subjected to newborn screening kung saan yung patient or yung nurse kukuha ng dugo sa plantar heel ng baby and then ibablat siya sa isang papel and then isasubject yun to test para malaman yung mga genetic disorders. Okay, so at an early stage, madedetect na agad. And then, mapipigilan yung mga detrimental effects na pwedeng ma-experience ng baby. So ano ba yung mga diseases na pwedeng ma-detect for the newborn screening? We have your congenital hypothyroidism, the congenital adrenal hyperplasia, the galactosemia. Okay? Meron deficiency dyan sa enzyme ba na galactase, if I'm not mistaken. We have the phenylketonuria, the G6PD, the glucose 6-phosphate deficiency, di ba? And then your maple syrup urine disease. Okay, so through newborn screening, these following disorders, itong organic acid, endocrine disorders, fatty acid, hemoglobinopathies, the urea cycle defect, and then the amino acid disorders can be screened. And then it can be properly managed. Kasi if not, yung patient natin na baby, pwedeng maka-experience ng mga developmental delay, pwedeng magka-seizure, coma, and then eventually lead to death. So kapag newborn pa lang sila, kasi they possess that certain type of gene at an early stage, pagkapanganak, madedetect na agad yan if meron talaga silang ganung gene. So, mas maganda na mag-undergo po yung lahat ng mga baby sana natin for newborn screening para hindi po sila mamatay at lumaki silang healthy. So that concludes our discussion for today. Thank you and God bless.